Welcome back to Drat Veterinary Podcast. My name is Dr. Alfred Tam, and today I have my first satellite interview with Dr. Hayley Hoffman.
Hello.
All right.
How's it going?
It's going well. So we never went to vet school together.
No.
I don't think the only way we kind of know each other is actually through a hospital that you externship at when I was kind of in my first year as a doctor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your first year, my almost first year.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on graduating. You're now one of us. And
yeah.
How's it been now? How long have you been out?
I've been out since June 23rd of last year. But I've been in practice since about November. So
November. Okay.
Not quite as long, but about 6 months now. So
that's actually almost as long as Dr. Coloretta has been in her internship. So you guys have pretty much been practicing for the same period of time.
Well, that's fun.
Yeah.
Maybe not as intensely, but
well, I mean, I'm sure it's a bunch of skills, a bunch of things that you're kind of been exposed to. It's just been a crazy ride.
Oh yeah.
Imagine.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So, I've talked about me going to the school outside of the States, in the Caribbean at Ross. And I believe you also went to a vet school outside of the United States.
I did. I went to the University of Edinburgh, the formal name being the Royal Dick School of Veterinary Studies.
Yeah.
Named for its founder, William Dick, jokes aside.
Yeah, that's incredible. I've heard only fantastic things about it. It's a 4-year program, I'm guessing. Is it pretty much the very similar curriculum?
Slightly different. So they have 2 programs that run in tandem and actually end up merging up. So there's the GEP program, which is the graduate entry program. It's more akin to what we do here in the States. So you do an undergraduate degree, then you go in, and so you've got the background. Essentially, their first year was my first 2 years. So I didn't do that program. I did the 5-year program.
Okay.
So the UK system, to simplify it, essentially starts tracking quite early. So when you go into law, medicine, veterinary medicine, you actually go right out of high school. So that was the program I did because there were certain AP classes, stuff like that they required, and I took them and managed to pass them and got in.
Wow. Okay. So you're saying you went straight in out of high school into?
Kind of. I took a quote unquote gap year because I took almost all of those requirements in my senior year of high school. So I did spend 1 year at the Ohio State University to come full circle a little bit, and spent 1 year there just because I didn't want to hedge my bet just in case I didn't get in, because admittedly I didn't do the wisest thing of applying to different schools. I applied to that one, decided I didn't want to go to the other AVMA accredited schools there. It was just more of a personal thing. It what fit me better, and I got in. So.
And that's incredible. I mean, it's one of the best vet schools, in terms of reputation and everything. So, I mean, that's huge.
Yeah, I will admit that wasn't why I joined it. I was like, I really wanted to get into the field quickly. I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I didn't want to kind of faff around with
messing around.
No, and they spoke English. And we're AVMA accredited, so that was, maybe not the most professional way of finding a good school, but that's how I went for it.
That's awesome. And here we are. I mean, I'm guessing you graduated pretty much just shy of 25.
Yep.
Wow.
Okay. I actually just turned 25, so
happy belated.
Crazy world.
Yeah. All right, your quarter century is here, and you've already established your whole thing.
Yep.
Cool. And so you're working GP, and we were just talking about this before I hit the record button, but we are kind of similar in the sense where I was from the West Coast and then I moved over to the East Coast. And, aside from Pam, I'm kind of by myself here. And you were originally from Florida.
Yes, unfortunately. I'm sure I've insulted a lot of Floridians.
It's not so bad so far. I say we know, geez. They are kind of the butt of the joke for a lot of things. But so now you moved over to California.
Yes, I did.
Okay. All right.
I decided when I was coming back, I was going to go to the hardest state to get into for some reason. I guess I'm a masochist, but that was my logic behind it.
How are you liking it?
I like it a lot. I a little weirded out by the weather, and I didn't think I would be. But it's definitely, this constant sunny weather has made me kind of lazy, because I'm like, oh, well, tomorrow, normally I'd be like, tomorrow it's going to rain, I got to do it now. Whereas I'm like, sunny tomorrow. I can wait.
Yeah, and it's also like Florida is going to be, it's sunny all the time, but it's like 80
Hmm.
or 90, even 100 degrees. But in the
Hmm.
Bay Area, because you're kind of in Northern California,
Yep.
it's like 60s and 70s. You can just wear shorts and a shirt, or maybe even like
Yep.
a windbreaker, and you're fine. And it's
Yep.
amazing, and I miss it.
You're always welcome back, I'm sure.
Yeah, hopefully,
Maybe not right
hopefully.
now, but
And that's actually where we met, right? So I was working in the
Mhm.
Bay Area at a private practice, and then you did your externship with us for a week.
Mhm.
Okay. All right. How was your expectations from your externship? How has that kind of met up with now going out and actually working in the real world?
Um, I think I thought I'd do a little bit better with my time management to start with.
Hmm.
It's definitely been a bit of a learning curve. It's definitely, I'm sure you might have experienced this a little bit, but when you go from, having experience in a hospital and doing a lot of the hands-on for so long, and then suddenly you're the doctor, it's
Yeah.
very hard to let go of delegating. It's
Hmm.
definitely probably been the biggest thing I've had an issue with, because
Interesting.
maybe,
Okay.
yeah, I'm always trying to help when they're like, no, you need to help yourself a little bit more.
Uh-huh.
So,
Yeah, that's funny because I guess that kind of was how I was, but then I'm also kind of lazy. So at the same time, I'm like, all right, well, you guys could go ahead and make this estimate and put this catheter in. I'm gonna actually no, I'm still in charge of making estimates for the most part. Yeah, that's okay. One thing that I actually realized was,
mhm,
you obviously worked on your skills and you've kind of polished, and I mean, you go to vet school to practice how to become a
mhm,
veterinarian. But I would imagine, 6 months into it, you're probably still pretty exhausted, or after your day, just because it takes so much energy to take in all the stimulus, all the new things that you're just kind of appreciating. Everything's still kind of new to you, right? And
yep,
so even though you're feeling like you had a good day, it was productive, you did a great job,
mhm.
you go home and you're like, "Oh, it was an 8-10 hour day, and it felt like I was there for a whole week."
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I
Yeah.
definitely don't help myself because I have a bad habit of running before work.
Mm,
So
good
it
for
doesn't
you.
help the exhaustion level.
Well, yeah, and so you were telling me about that. I mean, and that's I'm really, really impressed because a lot of people that I know, including myself, we
Mhm,
when we graduate, we go straight into going into our work, and we
mhm,
don't actually continue balance.
mhm,
You were telling me you're still running every day or pretty often. You
mhm.
also pick up several hobbies.
Yep.
So what do you do to keep your life balanced?
Um, I will, to kind of preface all of this, I will say that I can't really take credit. It was something my school drilled into us actually.
Hmm.
University of Edinburgh is really big on work-life balance. Whether or not you take the advice is up to you, of course, but they really, really drilled that in. So I
That's
have to say this
incredible.
all started because they were like, you guys need to have a life. I know you want to be vets really badly, and it's so exciting to be there, but you need to have a life.
Okay.
So what I do, typically, it's changed up a little bit. I know at one point I did see a little tail in the background of my screen. I do have a puppy now, so
I
she does get some
know.
of it. um, I don't, not that I'm advocating for quarantine puppies, but it was a timing. Wasn't planned to be one. But so normally I wake up at 5 every day and I go on a run. I used to do strength workouts at home, but with her, she doesn't like it when she's in the cage and I'm moving, so it's not only running. And then I get back and walk her. So every morning I run and walk her. And then other hobbies more come in on the weekend, but I'm really into cooking and baking. And I've started striking up gardening now that it's getting a little bit warmer out.
Uh-huh.
But it's more picking weeds at this point because I can't exactly go out and get things to plant. But
And you're still making a foundation for your backyard, right?
oh yeah,
Yeah,
oh yeah,
okay. So the weed picking is pretty important.
oh yeah.
Yeah. Actually, it's funny. I've just gotten obsessed with a new, well, not a new. He's actually a pretty known cook
Hmm.
in the world called his name is Kenji Lopez Alt.
Hmm.
I'm sure you've come across his name just
Oh
because
yeah.
he came out with the book called The Food Lab, And I literally just got this in the mail. Dr. Colorado bought this for me.
Oh,
And I
that's
just got it.
awesome.
Yeah, I got it in the mail yesterday. So I've been reading it all day on yesterday. And it's just, he's actually blown up pretty significantly over this whole quarantine period because he now does YouTube videos, or he's been doing it, but people are starting to watch it more and more. And he owns a restaurant in the Bay Area. So you should go check it out.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I mean, you're about an hour north of like San Francisco, right?
No, I'm maybe 15 minutes.
Just kidding. Okay, so you're pretty close. All right. It's over in Burlingame. Sorry guys who are listening, because this is important. it's over in Burlingame or San Mateo. It's called Worst Hall.
Oh, yeah. No, sorry. Separately, I have heard of that. My stepsister's also one of my enablers when it comes to cooking, and she's like, "You gotta go." And she told me right before our stay shelter got put in place. So.
Yeah, so he owns that restaurant, and they're actually opening up a speakeasy under the basement. So whenever they open up again, it's going to be ready to go. So yeah, I'm going to visit there for sure, and hopefully I'm going to bring my book. I'm going to have him autograph it. Just
do it.
Yeah. But so when we were talking last time, you were big on, you're really into baking. So, I mean, you now mentioned cooking. So is that also kind of, what's your thing?
I would say baking is more of the pleasure. Eating, not immediate pleasure because of my stupid decisions to run in the morning and wake up at the crack of before dawn. Most of my cooking is on the weekend. So I've got food to eat during the week. I'm big on finding, nutritious food, but like delicious, nutritious food, because, it's a whole clean eating push that's been happening right now.
Yeah.
A lot of it doesn't actually taste good. It's like life is way too short. So more baking is more pleasurable in the experience. I like the tactile nature of it. It's just very calming, especially when you've got like the dough that just you've been letting sit with the yeast in it, and then you have to go work it with your hands, and it's just such a cathartic feeling. I'm very big on little details, so something like that is really nice for me. I'm definitely the person who like pre-warms all of my mugs before I have tea or coffee.
Wow.
I love the yep, just for the feeling of the warm mug in my hands. It's just the best thing going.
Okay, that's cool. So, I mean, yeah, I think baking, it definitely is it's a scientist's kind of art, right? Because you measure it by, you have a food scale, a KitchenAid, all that kind of stuff going, or?
I do have a KitchenAid. I don't have a food scale right now. I've been playing a dangerous game of simply using my cups and all that. So I'm dying to get one, but with everything going on, I figure it's not really essential right now. So I'm going to hold off, but I'm waiting for things to open up so I can finally go get my food scale.
Okay. Yeah. And those who are listening who are wondering why we're talking so much about food, I find it so important to kind of share these things that kind of define a lot about ourselves outside of veterinary medicine, right? But kind of moving on, I guess it's a bit of a difficult conversation to not chat about the quarantine and this whole pandemic. But, aside from your hobbies of cooking and baking, as well as your exercise regimen, and now your new puppy, any other thing that kind of keep your life in balance?
Yeah, so I used to be an avid hiker, which they have closed all of the parks in my area, so that's not something I can do right now. I have replaced it with reading, and I feel forever slow on the draw. It seems to be repeating history in my life, because my cousin recommended a book to me about 2 weekends ago, and I ordered it on Barnes & Noble, being like, okay, it's not really essential, but I need a book to read. And she, spoke so highly of this book. So I got it, and as much as you can binge it by, knowing you've got to cook for the week and take care of a puppy, I did. And I was just like, this is so amazing. Like, why have I never heard of this before? And then I more or less found out it's because I'm very out of the loop.
It's called Harry Potter.
No, I'm not quite that bad, but they did release a series of it on Apple TV the week I was reading it, Defending Jacob. Yep, and I would absolutely recommend reading the book. I can't say anything for the series. I haven't read it yet, watched it yet, but the book is amazing. So that's what I've gotten up to with kind of adapting my hobbies.
Okay, I've actually never heard of it either. What kind of genre is it?
It's a crime thriller, but it's more told from the family perspective. So often in crime thrillers, they're more told from the cops or the prosecutors, that kind of thing. It's more told from the family of the accused. So it's pretty interesting in watching how that all plays out.
Okay, and what's it called again?
Defending Jacob.
Defending Jacob. Okay, how many books are there in the series?
Just the one.
Just the one. Okay, and so they've
just the one.
All right. Okay. What's the author's name?
Oh goodness. I'm probably gonna say it wrong, but I believe it's William Landay, I think.
Okay. All right.
I always get mixed up on his last
Yeah.
name.
Is fiction your type of novels that you like to read typically, or are you kind of more just general broad, whatever's good?
More, yeah, whatever's good. So I just before the stay shelter, when I had time to go hike, it was a bit more of a. It took me longer to get through, but not that it wasn't good. But I
Mhm.
did read Bill Bryson's A Short History of Everything,
Okay.
which essentially it's just a short history of all the drama of the medical and science world for the past,
Yeah.
basically, as long as there's been the scientific community. And it's hilarious. If you've ever read any of Bill Bryson's books, he's done some fiction and he's done some nonfiction, but it's hilarious every time. So I would recommend that as well.
Okay. You know what I'll do is actually maybe I can have a book list that you recommend, and I'll actually
Yeah.
post it on my Instagram, just kind of maybe top 5 books to kind of read or listen to an audiobook during this quarantine period.
Hmm.
Okay, so let's go back a little bit more on track about kind of just veterinary stuff. So
Hmm.
obviously you have just recently graduated. I'm about 2 years
Hmm.
out. So we're pretty fresh still.
Hmm.
I bet we're still being treated as pretty fresh in our hospitals.
Oh yeah.
Um, and I still have some friends who've either just graduated or are still kind
Hmm.
of on their way out in their last year. I'm guessing
Hmm.
you have the same. Are there any kind of tips or any kind of advice that you would give to people? I know it's a little bit unique, especially because of the
Hmm.
current situation. No one's really
Hmm.
experienced this before.
Yeah.
Do you have anything that you kind of want to share to either prospective veterinary students or prospective
Hmm.
soon-to-be graduates
Hmm.
that might want to hear anything?
Yeah, so I'd say just on a general scale, I think the best advice I can give to somebody is don't get all up in your head about, I mean, yes, ultimately it's your responsibility now, but don't obsess about it.
Mhm.
There's nothing wrong, and when you hit a milestone in asking for help, and however bad you think it's going to be, it probably won't be. Most of my friends, when they started out, I was one of the first among us who would work as the only vet on a day, and they were so terrified. And I'd done it a couple times, and I didn't really talk about it, but it was something that came up, and when theirs was coming up, and they're like, "What am I going to do?" And I'm like, just don't take a deep breath for starters. There's this big worry of like, what if something happens and it's my responsibility, and it's
Mhm.
just take a minute, breathe. Yes, it's your responsibility, but you don't have to. It's I know it's always scary, but I'm in a general practice standpoint, so I can say, if I'm the only one on, we have an emergency coming in and we have full consults. We have an emergency clinic really close by. And, call them and say, look, we can't give your animal the dedicated, attention it needs right now. Just
Mhm.
please, you don't mind redirecting for your sake and your animal's sake. So it's not as ever scary as they think it's going to be. That's
Yeah.
probably the biggest advice I can relay is
Mhm.
it's never that bad.
Yeah. At the end of the
So.
day, we're not in especially in the Bay Area, you're in a pretty
Hmm.
populated area where
Hmm.
if you can't do it, there's someone in the 10-mile radius who likely can, or at least give
Hmm.
a better answer. Um,
Hmm.
in terms of mentorship, in my last podcast with Dr. Colorado, we talked a little bit about internships and pros and
Hmm.
cons and all that. Obviously, you didn't do an internship like me,
Yep.
and you jumped into
Yep.
GP.
Hmm.
What are your thoughts on that?
I would say I got extremely, extremely lucky. I have fantastic mentorship from both my boss, who is on the cusp of retirement. Our agreement basically was as soon as I've had my first year, he's going to finally retire from the field. Whether that happens remains to be seen, but I have that level of mentorship as well as I do have one of the other vet I work with. I'm not sure how long she's been in the field, but I'd say she's probably close to like mid-career. So she's still, definitely someone to look forward to. And
Mm,
I've been extremely lucky. And another little tidbit of advice, if you're not going to do an internship first, is try to find a practice with mentorship. I've found it really, really useful. It's very nice to go and feel comfortable discussing cases or points where you hit a roadblock and say, I have no idea what to do.
yeah.
It's nice to know someone's got your back.
Yeah, I have to agree. I would say I didn't. my boss didn't have the ultimate best mentorship ability when I jumped into GP. So my first year and a half, fortunately, I had colleagues who were pretty much as fresh as I was, maybe a couple years out. So we kind of had this camaraderie kind of a effort where we worked together, which was nice. But, in hindsight, if you had the biggest argument that I had as opposed to not doing an internship is the fact that your income is dramatically decreased.
Oh, yeah.
But going into talking about going straight into GP, I would say, maybe not go in for the full amount that you want, but there is a compromise, I think, with really good mentorship. And still, I think there's a balance with if you wanted a really good mentorship, but you still didn't want to go for an internship just based on income, then go for a GP, and maybe you can sacrifice a little bit of that salary. It's still going to be more than an internship, but sacrifice that and get the good mentorship and the good guidance for at least a year or two, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. I don't mean to say this isn't like I've been, cut, in dramatic ways, but I definitely feel, I did take a little bit of a, pay cut compared to some of the other clinics in the area, which is fine, but I really have no complaints about it because the mentorship I am getting is absolutely, I have nothing bad to say about it, honestly. And that's not just me hoping they never find this. This is the genuine truth.
Yeah. And it also kind of makes a big difference on your location and where you're willing to move. I have some friends and graduates who only want to go to like Arkansas or a place that isn't very heavily populated. And they unfortunately don't have as many options, and they're pretty stuck on going back to where their family is, right? So obviously the pros would be maybe if you're living at home, you don't have to pay rent, or the mortgage or the rent in general is very, very low. But it goes back into just, I guess, what you want out of it. If you just want to have the DVM title and and you don't really want to have you don't want to practice your medicine and continue updating it. There's people who just want to do vaccines and kind of skin allergy stuff, and that's kind of it. I think that's totally fine, just as long as they understand that's what they want and they don't bite more than they can chew when they have a case that's more complicated than they can handle. Right?
Yeah. That's the main thing, end of the day, knowing where your limitations lie. I mean, same thing when you're, at that point, you're 10 years into your field, 20 years into your field, or you're brand new starting out. Same thing still applies.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other kind of questions or things that your colleagues have kind of been curious to know about?
Yeah, so I think the other main thing that comes up time and again is something you discussed in your last podcast, which is internship versus general practice and, what your goals are. And of course, there's the pay aspect of it, which, I mean, for my own personal aspect kind of came into it. I can't say it was at the forefront of my thought. I just knew for my own self, kind of personally deciding which I wanted to go into. Here in the States, it's a different ball game. So take that also with a grain of salt. When you do internships in the UK, if you are going to do it, you actually do go into general practice first. They don't want you fresh out of vet school for the most part.
Okay.
There's, of course, exceptions, but they want more of that practical handling, practical skills, knowing how, it all works before you go in. And, it's sometimes easy to think you know everything when you haven't quite touched the water yet. So I think that's the mentality there. So depending on who's listening, it's a bit of a different ballgame with the advice. But for right now, when I got out, I knew it took me long enough to decide I wanted to do small animal versus large animal.
Okay.
So I wanted the variety is what it kind of comes down to at the end of the day. Yeah. I wasn't ready for specialty, and I wanted to know I had the work-life balance down, and kind of those two factors combined, GP was the best place for me. So then, of course, if you have aspirations of going into specialty fields like oh goodness, I'm so sorry. I can only think of her first name. Dr. Coloretta?
Yeah, Pam.
Yes, Pam. She does have that, so it's definitely in her interest to do so. I have one of my flatmates is wanting to go into cardiology. For them, it's absolutely worth it. Every moment, every day, it's so worth it for them. Whereas I find in specialty fields, you tend to be more of a miracle for people rather than kind of the small good thing that they have happen that day.
The general practice.
Yeah, the general practice. I like to think of it more as, depending on the sidewalk most days, okay, it's not the life-changing good thing that happened to you that day, but it does make your day a little bit better. So that's essentially what I strive to be for people.
Well, so this is really my biggest problem with internships. I understand that you're not going to get paid as much because not only are they counting on using their resources, their doctors as your mentors, right? But if you're talking about an hourly rate and just the dramatic decrease, I mean, there are some cases where they're making a fifth of what other doctors are making. And you're already a licensed doctor at that time, right? Now, I get it. There is an exchange going on where, okay, you're going to give me all this knowledge and your resources are going to, guide me to this opportunity, as well as potentially with the internship, you're going to help me with connections and letters of recommendation to then get to my residency. Okay. What bothers me is, okay, you've already done a year of potentially 50 to 80 hours a week worth of work. Which equals, I mean, with a $20,000 or $30,000 salary, maybe 40, depending on where you go. Now, and you're also having to pay rent typically and live on your own for this time. Now you get a residency, and there's what percentage, over 50% chance that your residency is going to be in a completely different location than your internship. So now you have to move to a different state, or at least to a completely different area. And that moving cost is going to be several $1,000s. How do these people who just last, in the last year, who spent all their resources on just surviving, are able to afford a $5,000 or $6,000 move across the state to do their residency? And
that's assuming it's within the same state or within the same country. My flatmate who wants to go into cardiology, some of the places she was potentially looking at for residency are in the United States. She's in Ontario right now. She's looking at, Massachusetts, California, that's going to be more than a couple $1,000s.
And that's insane. That's what bothers me. I get that. Okay. Fine. We're going to pay you less. I understand that. And it makes sense, but there's contracts that you can have. At least they can pay for their moving fee. At least there's something, companies I think should be able to afford this. Yes, it's going to be an extra couple $1,000s, but it's a big, big hassle. And I know colleagues of mine who are now doing this. I mean, it's so unfortunate because I feel like they're almost being taken advantage of. It's like, well, how like they dangle this in front of their face. Like, well, how badly do you want this? You want to be a specialty, right? You've wanted this for years, right? Well, it's going to be $5,000 to move here. By the way, rent here is about $2,500 a month, and we're going to pay you $45,000 as a resident. That doesn't make any sense to me.
No.
And it drives me up the wall at times. Again, you do come back as a specialty, as you were saying, you kind of come off as this kind of more superior doctor. And absolutely, I mean, I would never look down on a specialist, or I guess another doctor, but they really have put themselves through so much to kind of get the experience and knowledge they have, and I really respect that. I just hate how the system works to put them in that situation. And that's what bothers me.
No, I agree completely. I mean, not just for the financial aspect of it, but in some cases it probably affects longevity in the field. They've worked themselves ragged. They're not in any financial capacity to do the outside of the field stuff. We've talked a lot about work-life balance, and they just haven't had that, both for time-wise and fiscally. So it's, how long can you run like that even after you reach your goal? I suppose the finances help eventually when you have increased salary and all that, but it's hard, even once you're kind of coming back out of that hole once you reach your goal, and I can't imagine what that's like. So
but granted, their salary typically is significantly higher. But you're also talking about another 5 years of student debt that have accumulated with interest. But overall, I mean, depending on what specialty, I mean, if you're talking about a surgeon, you're usually making, especially, I'm basing this on California or high populated rates. You're talking at least $200,000 starting, which is in many cases double what a veterinarian makes. So I mean, there is a balance on that, but still, can you imagine just finishing vet school with hundreds of $1,000s of loans, and then now you have to move to do an internship for 1 year? How do you even afford those costs?
I have no idea. I
So
genuinely,
yeah,
I'm cutting tight and I
yeah.
think I'm being paid fairly well. And,
Uh-huh.
it's one of those things where unless you've experienced it, I don't think you can truly understand.
Yeah. And when people do it, right? Thousands of people
Hmm.
do it. And, medical schools for humans is very similar.
Hmm.
I think they get paid a little bit more, but they're in a very
Yeah.
similar boat. Kind of, I guess, moving on from the rant, what are some things that now that you've gotten, I would say not more than your feet wet, it's been 6 months,
Hmm.
right? What are your goals, finishing off your first year of being a professional? What do you how do you want to kind of fine tune your skills for these next 6 months? What do you want to improve on?
I probably mostly surgery is where I'd like to
Mhm,
improve.
mhm.
Definitely been getting more lately. Just did a lot of pretty, I say invasive, major surgeries, and I would like to do more of that just because, starting off, it's pretty standard stuff. It's stuff I'd done as a vet student, which of course is useful. I'm not saying I'm mad about having that happen. It's really good because you can't get better unless you keep practicing.
Mhm.
Um, but I would like to branch out with my surgeries, go a little bit more advanced as far as my other interests. We're slowly integrating exotics into my practice,
Hey,
which I'm excited about.
okay.
Like I said, I love the variety. And then I would say more improving my dermatology. I would have to say one of my stronger medicines that I have, but I
Mhm.
do love it and I would love to do more and get better
Okay.
every day. So, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Going into emergency, I don't get a lot of derm cases. I get occasional because owners who
Mm-hmm.
are kind of weird come to the emergency for a hot
Yeah.
spot. But I miss that because it was pretty. A lot of the times you can fix it with basic medicine, so it's kind of
Mm-hmm.
yeah, or advanced medicine depending on how
Or
crazy
advanced.
you go. Yeah.
Yeah, we have been getting some complicated cases in, which has been mostly, due to the current situation.
Yeah.
Not a lot of the specialty stuff is open right now,
Hmm.
or at least not unless on an emergency basis. And like you said, there are, not exactly a great number of dermatology emergencies. There are a few, things like puppy strangles and things
Mm.
like that, which I've had cases of, but for the most part, it's tends to get put off as a non-emergency, and so I've been seeing more complicated cases lately, which has been very interesting.
Okay, good. And
I'm
and you're
enjoying it.
and you have your mentorship to really help you walk through that. So that's
Oh
really
yeah.
great. Yeah.
Oh
Okay.
yeah, no, and they're wonderful because it kind of goes both ways. Like I said, dermatology is one of my special interests, and I'm
Mm.
bringing over not just maybe updated information, but European updated information. We've now used different doses of Cytopoint because over there they use about half dose, and it works just as well. Yeah, fun
Really?
fact. Yep.
Okay. Well, good to
Uh,
know.
for any Americans out there, I recommend the NOAA Compendium. It has the dosages for Cytopoint, and it's a lot more. It makes it a lot easier to convince owners to do so because it's quite an expensive treatment.
It
So,
is very expensive. Yeah.
yeah.
But it's
So,
my personal favorite. I mean, I like it more
it's
than
amazing.
as well. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's amazing. Side effects and safety and all of that. It's just and it's so low maintenance. And I think
Mhm.
that's one of the big appeals for owners as well. It's you bring your dog in every 8 weeks or so to the vet, they get an injection, and that's it.
And that's it.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So, it's interesting you say surgery because I know a lot of initial vets get a little bit squeamish with that,
Mhm.
which is, I mean, that's super commendable.
Mhm.
Obviously, you've done some spays and neuters and mass
Mhm.
removals. What's the coolest surgery you've done so far? Or I guess maybe coolest is a bit, it's a bit of a subjective term, but
Yeah. Most interesting, I recently did my first official splenectomy as being the doctor in charge. Interesting case, not a mass. I'm sure for anyone who's in the veterinary field who hears masses tend to be your main reason to take the spleen out. It was a splenectomy and liver biopsy. It was an interesting case, not your typical routine stuff. So
okay.
it was interesting. Oh God, sorry.
That's all right. That's okay.
From the puppy life.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it was interesting from both a medical, medicine, internal medicine side of it, as well as the surgical, because there was a lot going on. So
Mm.
yeah, without going into too much detail
Yeah. Okay. That's
of
that's that's
the
that's okay.
nitty gritty.
Yeah, no, cool. No, I've done a couple splenectomies as well. I mean, it tends to be a little bit more. When I learned in vet school, they were saying, well,
Hmm.
it's the best surgery you could do. You snip snap and you're out of there and you save the animal's life and they walk out of the hospital. And
Yep.
it's a little bit more information than that,
Oh yeah.
that kind of comes into it like VPO. Anyways, we won't get too much into the medicine.
Yep.
Okay, how about now 5-year goals? Are you looking into eventually maybe doing a dermatology resident, or are you thinking about owning a practice? Do you want to be a partner? I mean, I don't know if this is too early to think about these things, but do you plan on moving back to Florida at any time?
No. No, that is a hard no for me. For anyone who knows me on here, I do have a bit of a, who's listening, I do have a bit of a medical condition that means hot, humid all the time is not agreeable to my person.
Okay.
So that's part of it. I also definitely outgrew it as a state. There's so many ways. I know I don't belong there anymore.
Okay.
But 5-year goals, my school offers master's programs, veterinary master's programs, and there's one in just general clinical medicine. It's something I'm really interested in getting into, just roughly at the 5-year point, just because at that point I've been in it for a while. My medicine's likely, not the most up-to-date thing at the moment, as well as it's something I can do from wherever I'm working. I'd love to go back to Edinburgh, don't get me wrong, but it's something I can do side by side with being in the field. So that's something definitely within the 5-year plan. Like I said, more at the 5-year mark, but definitely something I'm looking into.
That's cool. And is it something that that the Royal Dick only offers to their alumni, or is it something that all DVMs can kind of apply for?
I believe all DVMs can apply to it. Okay. I will be honest, I didn't look into that side of it because that is my
why would you, right?
But I do know as an alum that I'm fairly certain, because the only thing I'm aware of that I benefit from is it is slightly cheaper for me because I am an alumni of the school. So
okay.
Definitely, if you're interested, and the program itself has different aspects to it, rather than there's options to do, the full thesis paper, or you can continue just the whole master's can simply be clinical courses, reflection on things you're seeing in practice, rather than the typical master's program protocol, which is have your big thesis paper at the end. So depending on how much you like research, you have options.
Right. There's a reason why I didn't go into research, but that's really cool. All right. Why don't we finish up here with our sarcoma? Okay. So, all right. Oma sarcoma, I'm going to briefly talk about this. Stolen from a comedian, Dr. Mrs. Eliza Schlesinger, comedian, top of the cob. So Oma is obviously usually a benign tumor, so something that's not usually too bad. So in this case, it's something that we currently like. A sarcoma usually is pretty bad, so it's something that we kind of don't like at this time. All right. So you were saying you had about 2 Omas?
I do. I like to be, I endeavor to be an optimistic person, whether or not I always succeed is one thing, but always try. I feel like I am, but I also make the personal choice to be optimistic.
Okay. Well, what's your first one?
My first one, probably obvious considering how many times she's interrupted. But it would be my little puppy, Shortbread, my little golden puppy. She's darling. She's, I think personally, quite intelligent for, not that Goldens are necessarily held to being smart.
They have a high EQ is what they have, right?
Yes. Yeah. So she's just, she's adorable, and she's especially bad days, because there's, of course, when it rains, of course, there's been a couple lately. She's a highlight of the day.
I saw
makes
pictures
the bad days better.
Does she have her own Instagram, or just she has pictures just on your Instagram?
She just has pictures on mine, which she's definitely caused a massive uptick in my social media presence, because I will be honest, usually it's about once every 6 months. I just let the world know I'm still alive.
Yep.
But she has caused, I would say, a very statistically significant uptick in my social media presence.
Yeah, I noticed actually. So here, I'll go over my Oma, and then you could do your sarcoma, or your second Oma, and
then my sarcoma.
Okay. My Oma is, I'd have to say, something that I've been kind of into the last couple of years. I did make a post about this on my personal Instagram, but it is coffee. I've been trying to be pretty bougie about it. And it's kind of I've become bougie. I no longer drink, Folgers or anything like that, especially from the machines that you get from an office or something like that. I've really gotten into pour overs. So I got a whole Chemex. I got the expensive filters. I now get coffee that's, roasted within the last couple of weeks. So you get it fresh, and it makes a world of difference.
It does.
Holy cow, it makes a world of difference. It does take a little bit more time to brew it, and you can't just press a button on a coffee machine unless you had like one of those really fancy ones, which I actually got for free from a friend of mine, which then kind of got me into this whole thing. Yeah, I mean, it's if anyone is ever interested in exploring more of the coffee world, get a Chemex or a V60. These are pour overs. Guatemalan coffee is my personal favorite. It is so freaking good. Here's also a sponsor who they didn't even ask to sponsor, but it's called a 4 Till 4 coffee. My friend in Arizona, her and her boyfriend own this shop, and they make their own mixtures, and they are fantastic. And they ship things over. I'll tag them in the video so they know. But that's my aroma, and you don't need cream, you don't need sugar, you don't need any of that. You just need that beautiful roasted pour over coffee.
Love it. I actually am going to piggyback off that and use it as a segue, because my second OMA is local coffee. So part of, wanting to support local businesses, regardless of whatever's going on in the world. I've recently, before all this started, got into getting local coffee. I admit I'm not a pour over gal. Again, by going back to my time in Scotland, most people have French press in their house, and going out, they get espresso. There's just that halfway point is just not something that appeals to me. I'm much more a Bialetti kind of gal, stovetop espresso maker, much cheaper than those fancy machines. But yeah, local coffee, it's been I always try to get good stuff, but it's absolutely life-changing, because especially if you live in the area, you can get it set up. So, it got, roasted yesterday, today, it's
Well, so, I mean, those Bay Area listeners who are listening into this, what are some coffee places that you like right now that are local?
Right now, I am in Marin County, so Equator Coffee is definitely a good one.
Okay, I've seen those in the store.
Yep. Yeah. My the little grocery store I go to, a little local place, currently has Sight Glass. I believe it's a San Francisco-based coffee. That's really good. I definitely recommend both of those, of course. And the one I actually just started this week is Chromatic Coffee. I believe it's based down in San Jose, and I haven't started it yet. I just got my bag and didn't quite time it up finishing the Sight Glass bag I had, but I'm just smelling it. It's amazing. So I'm very excited to crack that bag open.
Nice. Yeah. So that's going to be your second? Is that your second?
That's my second OMA. Okay. Yeah, definitely not a sarcoma. My sarcoma is something that's particularly lately getting on my nerves, but not respecting other people's time. So I don't care if it's the person working at your local, your big local grocery, like a Safeway or a Publix, if you're in Florida. Everyone out there, I think every day is trying to do their best. And when you don't value their best and take advantage of other people, it really grinds my gears. And it's been coming out a little more lately with a lot of curbside veterinary service, and really not a fan for both my side of it and how my staff are treated. So Mama Bear's been coming out a little bit lately. We'll admit to that one.
Well, yeah, I mean, in a time of terror, people start clinging on to just themselves and their own personal needs, so they'll become much more demanding, and they're already very demanding for the most part. So it kind of kicks it into higher gear.
But it's, at the same time, and this may end up being a third OMA, in times of terror, I think the good and the bad comes out. So I've kind of, on the other side of it, I have had a lot of people who have been so amazing about the fact how we're running things now. They're super understanding. I've had some people, and they've looked at me. I've had it more for like a personal, not saying it's only happening to me, but, I can only speak from my personal experiences, where they've been looking at us still working, still open and medical, and their brains have connected it to treating like we're, frontline human doctors. And there's that appreciation, which normally I say, yes, I am a doctor, but in this case, I'm like, please hold off. I don't deserve that kind of praise. So it's been a two-way street. Definitely not just a negative, but in regards to that negative is my sarcoma of the week.
Yeah, actually, you know what? I guess I'll piggyback off of that in my sarcoma. I don't mean to disrespect, but I recently did see some posts where veterinarians or people who aren't in the human medical field are kind of complaining that they're not considered essential, or they're like,
Mm-hmm.
they're not. People are, including myself, are calling nurses
Mm-hmm.
and human doctors essentially heroes of the situation because they're
Mm-hmm.
breaking their backs trying to save as many lives and keep things under control as much as possible. And
Mm-hmm.
now you have veterinarians, you have others who are like, well, I'm a hero too. I'm still working. I'm really busy. And I understand the integrity of all the extra work, because both you and I, we've been slammed with work because of just everything
Mm-hmm.
that's going on. But I wouldn't consider myself a hero of the situation, right?
No, I mean, not saying, no, Alfred, you're not a hero, but I
Yeah.
mean, where we are in our fields, we're not at the front line. We're not
Yeah.
putting our lives, our families at risk. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't have any, I live alone right now. So,
Uh-huh.
I can come home, and if I infect my apartment, I'm the only one affected by it.
Yeah.
Now, still taking precautions, of course, but, we're not in the middle of it. We don't see that kind of level of death every day from something we don't even understand how it works. So
Exactly.
I don't understand. Of course, you want to be respected and still be like, yes, we're a doctor.
Yeah.
But right now we are not.
Pick your battles, dude. Like,
yeah,
I mean, again, I've been working a lot, and it sucks, but we're happy to have jobs. I mean, that's as lucky as I feel. I don't feel lucky enough to be considered a hero or anything.
No.
Yeah. So that's been kind of on my nerve, because people are like, well, no, I mean, I'm still a doctor. I mean, yeah, you are, but it doesn't mean veterinarians, obviously, who are in the CDC and trying to study these, then obviously you're a different case. You're definitely contributing to the heroic deeds of this whole pandemic.
And those in the food supply, there's been massive, because it's you've got to keep the outside contaminants out. It's a very contained environment, and they're definitely at higher risk than we are. But
absolutely. But us, who's making extra money because all the extra work, but we're complaining about it, I don't think we're considered heroes of the situation.
No, that's not okay. We don't deserve that title right now.
Yeah. But anyways, Dr. Hoffman, thanks so much for being on the show.
You're so welcome.
Again, and also congratulations again for your graduation.
Thank you.
Soon to celebrate your 1 year out.
Very excited.
Yeah, I'm not very good at closing goodbyes, but do you have any kind of last things to say for the audience at all?
Last thing to say, I will relay advice that was given to me by one of my rotations. When, and it sounds kind of grim and gallows, but, at the end of the day, when, we all go in the ground or cremated, wherever it matters, your tombstone should say more than just veterinarian. So always keep that in mind. You are more than your job. Yeah,
I absolutely agree. Okay. Thanks so much, Doc.
All right.
All right, guys.
You're very welcome.
Thanks so much for listening. We'll see you guys next time.